The cowboy was a man carved out of dust and solitude. His ranch stretched across the Montana plains like a forgotten story, silent, weathered, and soaked in memories. He was known by few and understood by even fewer. Folks just called him Buck. He didn't mind. It fit better than the name on his birth certificate, which hadn't been spoken since his wife passed 5 years ago. Since then, Buck had ridden his horses and tended to cattle with a heaviness that never left. His days were quiet, his nights quieter, and the wind was his only true companion. That was until the day he found the girl. She was no more than a shadow when he first saw her standing by the fence near his cattle pasture. One arm hugged tightly across her ribs, like she was holding herself together. Dirt stained her torn jeans, her hoodie hung off one shoulder, and her eyes were far older than 15 should ever be. Buck didn't say anything at first. He simply looked. She flinched when their eyes met. Not the normal nervousness of a lost teenager, but a raw, primal twitch, like a wild animal waiting for a blow. "You hungry?" he asked. The girl hesitated, her body frozen in that split-second decision between fear and hope. Then she nodded, so faintly that only someone like Buck, someone used to watching for signs in the silence, would have seen it. He didn't ask questions that first day. She sat at his old wooden kitchen table, barely chewing the sandwich he made, her hands trembling too much to lift the cup of warm milk. Buck didn't push her. He just placed a blanket over her shoulders and let her sit in peace. She didn't. Speak not that night. Not the next. But on the third day, she asked, "Why did you let me stay?" Buck looked at her. She was still thin, still jumpy. Her eyes no longer darted to every creak in the house. "Didn't feel right letting you go," he said. A man knows what a scared creature looks like. She was silent a long while before saying, "They used to beat me. My stepdad, my brother, even my mom sometimes." He didn't flinch, didn't offer hollow sympathy. He just sat down across from her and said, "You're safe now." In the next morning, she helped him in the stables. She brushed the old mare with careful hands, and Buck noticed how her shoulders relaxed when the horse nuzzled her cheek. Animals, he knew, never lied, and they seemed to know she needed something true. He learned her name was Lila. She had run away for days before he found her, slept under a tree, hid when headlights passed. Every bruise on her skin had a story. Behind it, and every scar, was a sentence she didn't want to finish. Buck went to town 2 weeks later and spoke with the sheriff. Quietly, carefully, said he found her runaway. Didn't give details. Sheriff nodded, said he'd look into it. Lila panicked when he came back. "Are they coming for me?" "No," he said simply. "They're not." He didn't tell her the details, that her stepfather had a long record, that her mother had signed off custody to avoid jail time, that her brother had been picked up on another charge. Buck wasn't one for gossip. He just promised her again, "You're not going." Back, weeks passed. Lila started laughing again. It wasn't loud, not at first, but it grew. The barn echoed with her soft chuckles as she watched Buck try to fix the chicken coop with nails too short and a hammer too tired. She started calling the horses by names. She stitched a tear in Buck's flannel shirt without being asked. She baked a crooked peach pie that tasted more like salt than sugar. But he ate every bite with a smile. Then one night, he heard her crying. Buck stood outside her door, hand hovering near the knob, unsure if going in would help or hurt. She was having a nightmare. He recognized the kind screams muffled in pillows, fists thrown in silence. He knew because he'd lived them too, years ago, when he lost his wife and spent every night dreaming of holding her again. The next morning, he handed her a set of papers. "What's this?" she asked. "Adoption," he said. "Only if you want it." She stared at the papers. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied. "You work hard. You don't lie. You make coffee better than me. And you've got the guts to survive things that would break most grown men. You're my daughter as far as I'm concerned." Tears slid down her cheeks. She tried to speak, but only nodded. They drove to the courthouse in the old pickup that smelled like hay and sun-warmed leather. The judge looked surprised when Buck said he wanted to adopt a teenager, especially at his age. But one look at the girl, how she gripped his calloused hand like it was her anchor. and the judge just nodded. Lila took his last name without hesitation. She wrote it over and over again in a dusty notebook, smiling each time she did. Years passed, but Buck never forgot the girl by the fence. She grew taller, stronger, her voice firmer. She entered rodeo contests and won. She wrote poetry on feed sacks and stuck them to the fridge with rusty magnets. She called him Dad in front of strangers and gave him a tie every Christmas, even though he never wore one. On the 5th anniversary of the day he found her, she handed him a photo frame. Inside was a picture of the two of them, she on horseback, him standing beside, both grinning. Below it, she'd written in looping letters, "He saved me, not with words, but by letting me be loved." Buck didn't cry out loud. But later, when she was asleep and the house was still, he looked out the window at the stars and whispered, "You saved me too, kid." Two souls lost to the world had found each other, not through blood, not through fate, but through a moment of simple kindness that became something bigger. A cowboy who thought his heart had gone cold, and a girl who thought hers had broken beyond repair. Together, they built a life stitched from silence, rebuilt by love, and neither of them ever stood alone again.